And we are live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter per usual. What's up, guys? This is Nick from P2W Fantasy here with my co-host for our Skrip 2 Ships show, Stephie Smalls. And Stephie, I'm just excited to talk some football per usual with you. It's been awesome having these shows every week. I think they've been really good and a lot of fun at the same time. Before we start talking about anything, I want to check in with you, though. What's going on? What's going on?
I told you a little bit before, and some of my followers know I had a little bit of a rough day today, but I was telling Nick I'm very, very excited. I've been looking forward to this show all day because I just want to not think about anything else and just talk ball for a little bit. So I'm very excited. This is like my saving grace today.
Hey, I appreciate that, and I look forward to it as well. I've had a kind of a crazy, hectic week myself, just with some work stuff, and then now I'm have this new coaching gig I'm trying to get together. So it's been a lot of random things at once.
And all of a sudden it's July. Like, what? That's what hit me today too. I'm like, what do you mean it's July?
Just flying through. And it's weird in Illinois, like the weather's not, it was like super hot. Now it's like kind of cool again. And it's like, it doesn't feel like summer yet, but we're getting closer to football. So that's one thing. I did want to ask. So I saw a teaser on Twitter. I saw like couple of my favorite people in the space just like laughing on camera. I think there's a show coming up. I don't know how much detail you've dropped. Is there anything you can drop a hint for if people can't already tell what's going on?
I'm so excited about this. The four of us have been planning this, talking about it. It started out as kind of an idea. We're lucky to have found each other, kind of keep each other sane in this industry. And, there's no all-female panel that I've seen. I'm going to no longer have my morning start sits with injuries. And then somehow this idea of Sundays are for the girls arrived. And we've been teasing it for a little bit. Got graphics maybe a couple months ago. I just throw a graphic up for no reason. And then we had a brainstorm video, decided to record some of it, dropped a couple teasers. It's going to be a blast. I'm so excited. So it's going to be 11:30 every Sunday Eastern. Myself, Cooter Doodle, Victoria, and Linda Lyons. It's going to be a really good time. We have some fun stuff planned, and everyone loves those starter sits, so it should be fun.
Absolutely, and I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning in on game day for that. I'm excited for it. I'm a big fan of all four people. Obviously, you and I do this show. I've had Victoria on the show twice. Cooter Doodle is on the show, and then Linda's in this happy hour group that gets together on Fridays that I pop into sometimes. So again, big fan of all four of you guys, and I think it's going to be a massive hit. So it's changing the game a bit, for sure.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. It's going to be something fun and to look forward to. And at least, we'll have fun with it. So if you guys don't like it, screw it.
Hey, it is what it is. I will for sure. Before we get into anything, I do want to say, as always, this podcast is partnered up with Fantasy Points Media Group. Check out fantasypoints.com for all of your fantasy needs, whether it's articles, DFS, redraft, dynasty, advanced stats. There's other media. So much to offer in one spot there. So check out fantasypoints.com/subscribe. You can get a discount using my promo code 21WIN10. So coming off an episode on Tuesday, I had John Helmkamp, I had Mike, a.k.a. Daddy's Home, and I had Amar on the show. We had a great time talking some stuff.
Awesome. It was an awesome show. If you didn't see it, go back and watch it. Great. Both of them fantastic humans. It's it was fantastic.
Literally laugh half the time, but it's weird because sometimes when you laugh too much, you don't take a podcast seriously, but so much good stuff was dropped at the same time. So I really appreciated that. Today, though, Stephie, we've done this before a few weeks ago. Figure let's do it again. Let's talk some mailbag questions because instead of hitting on the topics that everybody's talking about, let's hear from people on some of their questions that pertain to their aspects they're looking for in fantasy or things that relate to their leagues, whatever the case is. So we have a diverse amount of questions here, and I think there are going to be some good topics to hit on. So thank you guys for tuning in live. If you are in the chat or watching live, we'll get to this in a second.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win.
We got some people in the chat already. Herm saying, friendos, what up? Got LQ as well, fire content only. My boy Kevin, favorite show of the week. Keep crushing it.
What a squad. That's a trio right there. I mean, those are some of my favorite people. I can't ask for
what else can you ask for? We got to end the show right here. I don't know if we can top that. I don't know if we can top these people in the comments right now. I love it. Love it. All right. So got some great questions. I'll throw the first one on the screen here so everybody can see, but of course read it as well. And you mentioned this person earlier. She dropped a question for us. So we have Victoria at FFB_Victoria. Are we overanalyzing the teams with bad offenses, i.e. arguing with Jags receiver might be serviceable when rookie QBs typically don't take off like Herbert did last year? Same with who to grab from the Lions wide receiver room. So I think she's giving us some good examples here with the big question of, do we overthink some of these bad offenses? So I'll start from last year. The last year, top 10 offenses in total points, or I'm sorry, the bottom top 10 offenses in total points were the Jets, the Giants, Jaguars, Bengals, Broncos, Patriots, Eagles, Washington, Panthers, and Bears. So those were the bottom offenses. When I look at these teams from this past year, I see the names T. Higgins, Tim Patrick, Jacoby Myers, Travis Fulgham, J.D. McKissick, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, even your Giants, Shepard finished hot during the season. So those were all guys that I feel were usable on bad offenses. But in my opinion, all of those guys, you didn't have to get super early. I think if you played the waivers right, or if you drafted these guys super late or made some moves later in the season, you didn't have to like overanalyze these players in June and July. I think as the season went on, you found out, hey, Tim Patrick's having some good games. J.D. McKissick's having some good games. Curtis Samuel's having some good games. And you probably put a waiver bid in. So I think my first point with this whole topic is I think you can, especially in redrafts, kind of just play the season as it goes without overthinking about it first, because you're going to have those waiver wire periods and you can start to analyze early, hey, who's getting the volume, who's having some nice weeks, and then jump on those guys versus trying to predict the future in June and say, hey, this my deep league guy I have to get is this guy. Curious to hear maybe some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's funny because I think of teams like the Jets, who I think are getting gassed a little too much. I think that they will still be considered a bad offense, you know, if we were to jump forward a year. Yet everyone's very, very high on all those players. But is it because there's like flashy names over there? It's very interesting. And I think of DeAndre Swift, right? We all know it doesn't matter. There could be a Lions fan here, they will admit to you they're not a great offense, right? We could all agree on that. I don't think they're approaching good. I don't think they're approaching average. I think they're not going to be good. But DeAndre Swift still finished, you know, depending where you look, is like RB16. You know, he still put up 12 to 14 points per, you know, depending on where you're looking, obviously. But I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. I think also dynasty and redraft are very different animals. I think that redraft, you know, you can throw those darts more on waivers than you can in dynasty, because I think people hoard players, I'm noticing, especially this year. So it's a lot easier in redraft to still sneak those guys like Sterling Shepard than you can in dynasty.
I completely agree. I got Kevin in the chat talking about Jared Goff because we've had some debates on him, but I think it's good points.
He's going to do fine, though, Jared Goff. Everyone lay off him. Which one of you is on the wrong side? Lay off the man, okay?
I like Jared Goff. I've always liked Jared Goff. Kevin, not so much, but I've always liked Jared Goff.
Fine. You know, it's like it's kind of like when they hold a kid back a year, right? You're a little bit more advanced than your grade. So that's kind of like going to the Lions. Like, you know, he was in 6th grade at like on the Rams, and now we have to hold him back because he didn't do very well. But I think he's more advanced than that team. So I think he'll do okay because he's going to be, you know, he's going to be the 13-year-old among
that's a good point. The only issue is he might have been in a better class before, and now he's downgrading his class. So he might be okay, but maybe like the teacher and the curriculum and all that stuff is not as good. But I feel you on that. But good points about like you said, playing redraft versus dynasty. I think that's a good point too. I think digging deep into these bad offenses is something maybe you focus more on in dynasties because they're usually deeper and you're playing for multiple years versus redraft. I don't think you have to overanalyze everything to begin with, because I think in a redraft, you are focusing on getting the best true talent and the best players that you have confidence in versus like, hey, I'm going to take this chance on Brashad Perryman on the Lions, or I'm going to take this chance on Marvin Jones Jr. versus some guy that I know is going to be better and have a better target volume. So I think playing redraft versus dynasty, like you said, Stephie, is a good point when looking at these offenses. Do you spend personally a lot of time trying to break down in crowded offenses with question marks? Do you spend a lot of time trying to break down who's going to be the 1, the 2, and the 3, or do you just kind of look for, I don't know, specific qualities in guys? So like for me, when I look at, and we'll talk about the Jaguars room later, but when I look at like the Lions room, I look for what I want in a wide receiver. I want target volume and I want consistency. Those are my two things. I don't know if there's like specific things you look for when it comes to breaking these issues down.
Yeah, I just got another bad news. So I think you're right there. And a lot of it comes down to the quarterback. And I think people forget that. Like, it's very easy to get blinded by a name. Like, you know, obviously this is a horrible example, but it's the first thing that's coming up. Actually, we'll just go to my Giants, right? So Galladay, a lot of people are instantly high on, but there's other things in the situation going on. Is he going to get that volume and the amount of targets to do what you want for him? And I know he's going to come up later because he's a very polarizing character. But you have to look at the quarterback. Can that quarterback support what your team needs? So I think that's the quarterback plays a huge part in that. The running back, sometimes you can get away with it not mattering, right? Like you can still see a running back produce very, very well. But when it comes to wide receivers, especially if they have a special skill set, and if that quarterback can't fulfill that, you're not going to get crap out of them.
Yeah, and I just want to finish off on that note. You saw, like with the Jaguars, we'll talk about them in a little bit, but some inconsistencies from the quarterback led to iffy points per games for some of those wide receivers. So good points all around. We can move on to the next one. I think it's actually from Kevin, who was in the chat. And you've been talking about one of these guys almost every week, Stephie. So I think this is familiar. No, it's a familiar name here, but saw this trade in a Dynasty 12-team Superflex PPR. And this is Kevin at DuBois_22. Nick Chubb for CeeDee Lamb. So who do you have? So I'll first give some, and we lost our template out of nowhere. There we go. I'll first give some rankings I got. I found some rankings online. So Fantasy Pros has Chubb is the overall 11th player, the best out of, if they listed all the positions, they have Chubb is the 11th overall player, and they have CeeDee Lamb is the 23rd overall player. Fantasy Points, so obviously partnered up with this podcast. Fantasy Points has, for the positions, Nick Chubb is the RB8 in Dynasty, and then CeeDee Lamb is the wide receiver 12 for Dynasty. So I guess, Stephie, for you, I know you're a big Lamb fan. In this trade, do you stick with Lamb or are you siding for Chubb?
I can't stand this question, DuBois. Listen, this stinks because I'm a big fan of both. I'm as outwardly about my love for Chubb, but and that, that's what she said, whatever. But I like both of these people. Here's the thing. So it's going to come down to your roster, but if we're doing just straight up, who am I picking? It's going to be CeeDee Lamb. There's just no way that this guy doesn't have the role that we are expecting him to. It amazes me that people think that he is not going to do fantastic. He still was so productive without Dak, and Dak coming back. This offense their defense is okay. I'm not sold on the changes they've made, but you bring a lot of the O-line back. You have Dak again, and Dak and CD just haven't had that time yet. And it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful thing when it happens. He's also at that point between the two, right? He's a younger player. I'd rather have the upside there too. And I just think CD is going to have fantastic weeks.
I think all good points. And I have an issue with this too, because I can see both sides of it. And I know that's like the cop-out thing to say all the time. And I think John on the show Tuesday kept making fun of Mike, who was saying something similar, because everybody expects a firm stance on everything. But to Chubb's point, I'm going to read off some statistics from this past season. So out of players that scored 300 or more fantasy points, there was 3 wide receivers and 3 running backs. So that's pretty even there. So 250 to 299 fantasy points, there were 7 wide receivers and only 4 running backs. And then let's go down to one more tier, 200 to 299 fantasy points. Or no, I'm sorry, 200 to 249 fantasy points. There were 17 wide receivers and 6 running backs. So it seems like when we break down the tiers of points, there's always a lot more wide receivers as we go further and further down than running backs. So sometimes for me, I tend to lean the running back, because I feel like the sample size of how many running backs are going to perform to an elite level is a lot smaller than the potential of wide receivers. So part of my reasoning there is because of that. So I usually tend to lean running back. But in Dynasty, I can see the flip side. You mentioned age. The lifespan of a wide receiver versus a running back. A running back's not coming into the league and being elite for 10, 12 years. A wide receiver is, though. So I can see both sides of it. I think it comes down to, obviously, your roster makeup in this trade, for one. And then for two, I mean, for me, I usually like to get as many running backs as possible for a 2 to 3 year window. Other people want wide receivers for like a 10, 12 year window. So it really... Really, you're juggling 2 elite players, and it just comes down to what do you want? What do you want in Dynasty?
And if you were to see Chubb, like, I really do see him, you know, I think he's just going to take over as like the main dude in the offense. I really see that happening as much as we get excited with OBJ coming back, and I'm excited too. But aside from him, you know, that team is on the skilled side a little bit older. Like I noticed that when I was starting to look at it, like their wide receiver core is a little weird, kind of, and I just think that the running backs are going to end up being the main thing that we see. We kind of saw Mayfield go that direction, anyways. But I think CD, yeah, I'm going to go CD, and it hurts. And maybe in redraft I would take Chubb, but
I think, and I can completely see that, and I think just for me personally, I'm going to take the running back just because that's how I play. That's how I play. But how I play, how you play, 2 different things.
Absolutely.
Chubb, too, only played 12 games this year. It's crazy that he was the running back 11. Insane.
It's true. Yeah.
But Hunt does kind of cap that ceiling because of the passing work and touches. So good question there. I like the fact that we can see both sides of these things, because it doesn't make, you know, one of those statements, hey, it's this answer and it's not close. We'll go to the next question here. Coach Bruce, who was on, I think I was his first podcast. So he was on the podcast not too long ago. His question here is based on offensive scheme personnel and strength of schedule, what quarterback has the best chance to throw for 6,000 yards in 2021? So this question, it's tough, because I think the record, I have this record. Peyton Manning has the record, and it's 5,477 yards.
Shouldn't we, can we say what team he is a fan of, though, at least? Because I feel like this is a loaded question here.
He's hinting at it. See his Nick loves Mayfield this year. I do not. No,
I never loved Mayfield.
Me neither. We have that in common.
I don't care.
That's our club.
Him.
That's our club. I'm anti-Mayfield. I'm always anti-Mayfield. Yeah. He is a Cowboys fan, and I think that might be an easy answer. My answer is not the Cowboys quarterback, though. I do want to make note that nobody's thrown for 6,000 yards. So Peyton Manning in 2013 has the record 5,477 yards. So I think it might be a nobody answer for this. Actually, no, I take that back, because they have an added game this year. They do have an added game this year. I forgot about that. So somebody probably will throw 6,000 yards.
What was the most last year? Was what? If I pulled up the right year, Yeah.
I got it in front of me. So 2020 was Watson, 4,823. The year before, Winston, 5,109.
But even with another game, that's a lot of yards. You're not going to get.
That's a massive game. That's a huge game. Do you have somebody that comes to mind, or do you want me to go first?
In honor of him, I'm going to say Daniel Jones. No, I'm kidding. The guy that has the highest chance, yes, I will say it to you, Dak Prescott got it. They say he was on pace for 6,700, whatever the hell they said. I think it's still kind of dramatic, but if you take away, he could easily throw for 5,000. I don't think that is out of the question. Deshaun, he did what? He was only shy, less than 200 there. So it's very, very possible that he can do that in the offense that he has. So I think Dak probably has the best chance there, which pains me to say. And that was a loaded question, and that was crap.
I think he was kind of hinting at which quarterback kind of in the Texas area around those states will throw. But right. So that would have been my answer as well. But I figured the same thing. I'm gonna spit out somebody else here. So I got a lot of stuff to spit out here, and I'm not gonna say that this quarterback is gonna be like the quarterback 1 or the quarterback 2 or 3. But I think from a yardage standpoint, he can be one of the highest guys in that category. And his team, the Bengals, they play the Browns, they play the Ravens, the Steelers, those teams twice. They play the 49ers, the Bears, the Packers, the Chiefs. So the Bengals have a very tough schedule. I think the Bengals are going to have to throw the ball more than any team in the league this year. 5 out of 10 games, Joe Burrow had 300-plus yards in the games that he was healthy. He had one game over 400 yards. So he was slinging the rock a lot in his rookie season. I know college does not always translate to the NFL, but in 2019, when Joe Burrow won the Heisman, the league leader in the NCAA for receiving yards was Jamar Chase, who is now on the same team as Joe Burrow. Higgins and Boyd, both individually, had 6 games with over 70 receiving yards. So to me, I start adding things up. I start adding the schedule's hard. They have to throw the ball. That's one thing. 2, did we see Joe Burrow throw the ball a lot when he was healthy? Absolutely, he did. And then 3, does he have the playmakers that will allow him to throw a ton of yards this year between Boyd and Higgins and Jamar Chase? Absolutely. So I add up all those things. I think Joe Burrow is a great candidate to be one of the league leaders in passing yards in 2021.
I could totally see that and I want to draw attention to one thing. So he played 10 games, okay? And just because I had such a crazy day, I wasn't able to pull it up. But then, what is this? Can you let everyone know? Because I'm free. What is this? Lamar Jackson? He threw barely 100 more yards than him, and that's very interesting. So he played 6 more games than him, and he was only able to come up with 2,757 yards. And Joe Burrow was hurt for 6 games. Very interesting stat. Really like that. Something I'm probably going to be annoying about on Twitter later.
Stir the pot for sure. No, but I think it all adds up, though. I think it adds up. And I think if you look at some of these teams, you want guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? People want him to throw the ball for 80,000 yards this coming season, but his defense may not need him to do that. His running game may not need him to do that. No knock to Joe Mixon, but maybe some knocks. But I think everything just lines up for Joe Burrow to be one of those league leaders. And I know it comes down to, health and then how do those wide receivers fit. But we saw 2 out of 3 last year, and now we see him with his old college teammates. So my pick is Joe Burrow. So we got Stephie picking Dak. I'll pick Joe Burrow. Good question, though.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Let's see what else we got here. All right. So we got Sam Wagman at Swagman95. Out of all the second-year running backs, who do you expect to have the best fantasy season? Who has the worst season? And then he went on to list them out for the listeners: CEH, J.K. Dobbins, Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Gibson, Akers, Zach Moss, A.J. Dillon, James Robinson. So I think we can break this off into two different, almost two different topics here. Who can finish the best? We can both go through that. Who can finish the worst? So for me, I think the easy best might be Jonathan Taylor. I'm one of the biggest Swift people you'll meet, and I love DeAndre Swift, and I think DeAndre Swift's going to do a lot better than the people that say he won't will do. But Jonathan Taylor, 5.0 yards per carry in his rookie year. He had the highest catch rate for running backs, 88%. He was third in rushing yards and sixth in fantasy points. I know Marlon Mack is coming back, and everybody, and I'm not rapping there. I'm rhyming, but Marlon Mack is coming back, and he's coming off an Achilles injury. And I talked to Dr. Edwin Porras, also from Fantasy Points. He's on my podcast. Great guy. And he told me though that the Achilles injury is it's tough to come back from because you lose some explosiveness, and that's huge for football. If you're a basketball center, maybe you're okay. You know, if you're a goalkeeper in soccer, maybe you're okay. But for a running back, losing explosiveness, I don't know if Marlon Mack's going to be the same guy. Hines does cap his receiving for Jonathan Taylor. But at the same time, we saw him finish so high in fantasy with Hines playing pretty much every game. And we know that O-line's good. And we know that there's a new quarterback. There might be some potential for them to move the ball in the air. Not sure how you view Wentz, but all in those things, I see Jonathan Taylor is just the shoe-in for this. For me, I think there's a lot of questions with some of these other guys. Was that also your pick for the sophomore to have the best?
Yes, I was going to say him. Jonathan Taylor has actually grown on me a little bit more. I think because I am such a Wentz hater, it took me a while to come to terms with this a little bit. Like I've battled it, even though I kept drafting him. But what he finished, I think fantasy points, did they have him at RB6? Maybe like somewhere around there. Right? Somewhere
around there, yeah. I'll take your word on it. Yeah.
I think it was somewhere around there, regardless. But still, like, the dude did fantastic. And I think that it's only up from here. Even if Wentz can't air the ball out, if Wentz acts like Wentz, I think we still see, Jonathan Taylor do absolutely phenomenal. So, and Marlon Mack, not an issue, not worried about it. Gibson's an interesting name. I'm starting to worry about Gibson. I talked about this, I think, on the last show or maybe the one before, but, I really don't like that his turf toe is being talked about again. Not a fan. It nags the crap out of players. A lot of people that follow me know that I really did think that he was surgery bound after that injury. Really didn't like the way it looked on fit. It was just not pretty. So to hear it's coming up again, it's like, do we lose him again for 2 weeks like we did last season? Does it end up being longer? Does he end up needing the surgery? So he's an interesting name, but between Fitz and the toe, that's the only reason why I think I would pick Taylor over him.
We'll go to the worst one, and then maybe we can just touch briefly on this class, because the class is interesting because I think that we've seen a lot of swings and values between these guys. We saw Jonathan Taylor is like the RB2 in Dynasty, and then he shifted down to like the 6 or 7, like you said. And then we saw J.K. Dobbins, his stock rose, it fell, it's kind of rising again. It's an interesting class, but my guy on the flip side, unless you want to go first. I don't know if I want to snipe you.
No, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go first because I think we're going to be different on this one. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. So I'm going to pull that back up just because it's like a two-sided question here. And we both said Jonathan Taylor. Stephie mentioned Antonio Gibson possibly having the best season, but the turf toes, kind of an asterisk. I did mention DeAndre Swift, who I love a lot, but I think Jonathan Taylor is the most safe. But who on the flip side will have the worst season? So we have CEH, Dobbins, Swift, Taylor, Gibson, Akers, Moss, Dillon, and Robinson. So we may be different on this, and I kind of stuck to my stance on this, but my guy is A.J. Dillon. He was buried on the depth chart. I love it.
But I came up with a second. I came up with another one.
Okay, all right.
I had a gut feeling that would happen. So, but mine was A.J. Dillon. The dude's screwed next year.
And I think he'll play more than he did the previous year because he's not the third string running back. But the fact that he was the third string running back, I think, says enough. But A.J. Dillon, a lot of people are, in love with the quads and, saw the one game last year we popped off and he was awesome for that fantasy week, but he's a handcuff, man. I think he's going to play more than he did last year because now he's the second running back instead of the third. But Aaron Jones is a phenomenal running back. Aaron Jones does everything great. People think that A.J. Dillon will snipe all the red zone carries. You're crazy, because Aaron Jones is good at that. Aaron Jones is good at catching the ball. A.J. Dillon, I got a quick stat here, had 21 receptions in 35 games at Boston College. So it's not like this guy in college was a pass catcher. He wasn't. I'm not saying he can't, but I've never seen him be that guy, so I don't understand the thoughts between that. So if you are a second string running back, I think you have to offer something that the first string does not. And I don't know what that is, because Aaron Jones can do it all. So my guy is A.J. Dillon. And some of the other guys on the list, and I know some people are worried about Zach Moss and, oh, James Robinson, Etienne's there. I still think James Robinson's going to play. I still think Zach Moss is going to play. I think when you look at the end of the season, out of all these guys, who has the least amount of touches, I think it's Dillon.
Yeah, and you actually talked me out of my backup there a little bit. I just think, looking at what A.J. Dillon did, there's nothing super thrill. It's interesting. Him and Tanyan are both interesting, because they were kind of these waiver wire sweethearts a little bit. Like they got really exciting, and at some point, and it got everyone's hype up. But is that just a fluke, or is it something that we're going to see moving forward? So I think really against these guys, as much as people really trash Moss, at the end of the day, Singletary is not someone to worry about. Moss is going to be just fine. We barely saw enough of him for people to be judging him. He was fantastic in college. And they don't really have a running game. So I think Moss immediately is going to do better than A.J. Dillon, because he's splitting less targets than, Dillon will do with Jones.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that last year you saw plenty of times where Moss was good, but then Moss was bad. But on the same note, Devin Singletary was good and kind of bad. I mean, there was no clear sign that, hey, year two, Moss's role is going to decrease. I don't see that. I feel like he can progress in the system. Yeah. He had more touchdowns than Devin Singletary. Maybe he's utilized in that way. If we look at the rest of the guys, J.K. Dobbins, I know Gus Edwards is still there, but he popped off the last handful of weeks. I think he's still going to be annoying at times because maybe of a capped upside, but I still think he'll be fine. CEH, I think a lot of people are still kind of iffy about, but I think his role is solidified in an offense that's very good. So I just see perks of all these guys. I just don't see the perk for Dillon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And I think that hype train, it was so crazy because him and Tanyan, both of them, it was like an explosion of excitement. And then it died off. And now you hear barely anything about either of these guys. Because I think, again, they're like those mid-season sweethearts, especially in redraft, that you get lucky if you play them right. Like the way that Wayne Gallman was, there are those guys where they really do break out in the middle of the season. But I don't know that means that he's going to sustain enough to beat out any of these guys.
Yeah, and I think just the point that we both are getting to wrap this one up before we move on is most of these other guys have standalone value. I think A.J. Dillon would potentially need an injury for him to be very valuable. And in that case, we're not telling you not to draft A.J. Dillon in redrafts and things like that, because he is a good handcuff. He definitely is, but the rest of these guys have kind of more solidified touches, and I feel like both of our opinions here. Good points all around. I want to make sure I'm not skipping anybody. All right. Jason Voorhees. I think he just had a birthday. He's always tuning into the show. So shout out to Jason.
He is a fantastic human. This is one of the most, just a quick shout out to him. One of the coolest, most supportive, positive people in this entire industry, for real.
Yep.
I made sure to give him a shout out to try and get him into Scott Fishbowl. He got in. I'm very happy for him. But
awesome.
I will just pay him that respect a little bit because he's very supportive.
He is, and he tunes into this show a lot, and he comments nice things. And I will say, for people listening to podcasts often, the little things for people that do this stuff goes a long way. Personally, when I'm supposed to be working at work and I'm doing this stuff, I'm taking notes for the show and stuff and preparing, and then I go on the show later and somebody comments randomly and says, "Hey, you guys had a good show." That shit means a lot to me. So I appreciate
so much. One time today, my crappy day, not to go off the rails, but
no, go ahead.
Someone screenshotted them having Jalen Darden, they're about to take him like in the last round. Like that makes me so happy because it means people actually tune into my stuff. They listen to me. They believe in me. They believe in what I say. So I was very excited. You know, they are listening that I think he's a great late round pick. So it's the little things. It doesn't take much. It's just the small stuff.
So if you are a fan, an analyst, content creator, whatever the case is, if you see things you like, tell people, because I promise it goes a long way. So shout out to Jason and everybody else who consistently does that and tunes in and comments. We appreciate it. Jason's question here: in a 12-team league, either dynasty or redraft, what would you say is the very best spot draft position to pick from? And Stephie, I know the numbers 1 and 2 together stand out for you, right? For what happens, I don't know if that's your preferred, but I see often you are the 12 spot. But if you had the choice, you got to pick redraft or dynasty. Where do you like to draft?
I do like a later, you know, in redraft, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter as much to be towards the end. I don't know what it is, but I do like the later end of things. I like that upside of getting, you know, the double pick almost on the swing, something about that. And it's funny because once you get, you know, these picks so many times, I drafted the other day at like the 104 and I literally didn't know what to do. Like I was freaking out because I'm just not used to waiting that long to get my, you know, it's either I get 2 picks or get in. So I do definitely in Dynasty like I have grown to love my 112 because I think I can stack players. But then you can also get screwed that way if, you know, everyone goes on a certain run and it's still coming back to you. So in redraft, it doesn't matter quite as much. I think being anywhere in that you don't really need the early picks there. I don't know that it's really necessary because I think still at 105, 106, 107, there's so much value there, especially in redraft. So redraft, I don't really care. I don't really want the 101. I don't know what that adds because I think you can still get so many other people. So in redraft, it doesn't bother me as much. Dynasty, I like to be towards the end there, you know, and even in the Scott Fishbowl, but you know, that end pick with the third round reversal is going to be nice. Perks.
I like the redraft point because I feel like, especially if you play in a standard, like not a standard league, like a PPR league, but your standard like one quarterback, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm going to take McCaffrey at the 1." I think if you took another running back at the 5, McCaffrey might be better, but you're like, you know, it gets kind of boring at times, like having to pick the clear cut guy. I like the ends personally, and it's weird for me because I'm so impatient in drafts. Like I'm so impatient. Like I feel like I'm watching paint dry when it comes back to me if I'm the 1 or the 2 or the 11 or the 12. But I also think I like having the ability to see the board and identify like 3 or 4 guys and then pick 2 of them. So that's the reason I like the ends too. I like the 11 and the 12, and I don't mind the 1 or the 2 because you're getting those picks almost back to back, you know, at times. Right. And I feel like if you see 2 players at the 5 spot, there's no chance you're getting that other player unless it's like a deep dive player. I like the option to get one guy and the other guy I've been eyeing. And that's just me. But at the same time, I'm like so impatient. I'm like sitting there like
and
twitching.
The thing is too, and this, I know, literally, and this is what happens too. And it'll be funny. I'm so excited that you and I are going to be doing a live draft together because I think that's going to get so chaotic. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think that's why I kind of hate rankings. I think tiers are way better because we're talking like some of these guys, the points really between the 2 of them, it's negligible. Like it really doesn't matter, you know? So I think having those later spots, it's fine because you can still get a top tier guy in his position. You might not get the guy you're hoping for. And I usually, you know, I'm very against the grain. Everyone knows that. I've only had the 101 once. And I didn't take Patrick Mahomes. I didn't take CMC. I took Kyler Murray because that's who I believe in that tier class there. So people will think that's crazy. But again, so like you can still get your guys and get guys that have great value, especially at that, you know, those late picks. Sometimes depending on what everyone did, you know, if everyone RB run or ever went on a QB run, I might stack 2 wide receivers and then not think about it the rest of the draft until, you know, the 4th round or the 5th round. So there's a little advantage there because you can kind of get 2 really elite guys of one position if you want to.
Yep. Completely agree there. And speaking of that draft, I'm excited, but I feel like I'm kind of nervous because I want to do good in that draft, but I feel like the draft party itself might get to me a little bit. So I'm going to have to take like some extensive mental notes to prep for that draft there. Let's get to the next one here. We got John June. Great guy. John and I have collaborated on a few things in the space. Nice. Absolutely. I was on his show. He's on my show. I consider him a good friend. At JR Football Nerd. Which veteran 3+ years experience running back in the top 24 is going to disappoint fantasy managers this year? So that is hard. Now, I kind of struggled with it a little bit, and I just stuck to my brand, not P2W, just Nick. And I always fade Joe Mixon. I don't want Joe Mixon. A lot of people argue with me about things. He has an ADP of the RB 12. I think, like, I look down the list for redraft.
12?
Yeah, RB 12. Gibson, Swift, Najee, CEH, Dobbins, Sanders, Montgomery, Carson, Gaskin, Jacobs. Those are all guys going after him. And I'm not going to say I'm going to take all those guys, but I do prefer a handful of those guys. 2020 was the RB 49. That was due to him missing 6 games. Or no, he only played 6 games. 2019 RB 13, 2018 RB 10. So 2 pretty decent years. 2017 RB 34. There's a lot of people just much higher on him than I am. He had 1 massive week this year, but then he had a bunch of weeks when he played. So Joe Mixon, for multiple reasons, I'm not a fan of him. I'm not going to get into things, but I'm just not a fan of Joe Mixon to begin with. And then from a fantasy perspective, I just don't see the upside. I don't see the consistency. So he's a guy that I'm just kind of out on, and I always have been.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to look at these. I agree with you.
I'll get yelled at because a lot of people will be stands for him and everything, but it's just not for me.
It's fine. And I don't think that he's going to do as poorly as everyone is saying. But again, like, and me neither. We talked about this last week, right? Like, people are forgetting you're also bringing back 2 huge parts of the running back and like everything about the running back position in fantasy, in football, whatever it is. Like, you're getting back CMC and Saquon. That is automatically, no matter what, unless bearing injuries, they're going to knock 2 people out of this, right? So 100%. 2 of these guys will be out. It doesn't matter. You can include Najee. I think Najee will easily step into this equation. So he's going to knock. So we're talking 3 of these people are not, these players are not going to make it. I'm pulling it up now, kind of taking a peek here because I didn't come as prepared as I normally do every week. But there was a name.
You have a name? All right.
All right. Yeah. Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake is in an interesting position. I think we talked last week. Josh Jacobs did much better than I think people are giving him credit for. Yeah. He finished within the top 10. And I think that it's going to be an interesting situation over there. Kenyon Drake concerns me, like we talked about the episode before, because we're talking about 2 very similar players, like mirror image aside for career touches.
I think we both said that. We both said it like right out the gate. They're like, they don't complement each other. They're like the same dude.
There's nothing about it. So I'm confused. I was always confused about that move. You know what? Kenyon Drake had 1 year that we got kind of exciting about receiving thing. Like, no, it's just, so Kenyon Drake concerns me. I have never been a huge fan of his, so that might be part of it as well. But I think Josh Jacobs could easily continue to do what he's doing. And then if we see like Ruggs or one of these guys over there end up actually coming to and being the player that we all thought, does Kenyon Drake take a slight in that? I think it'd be very hard for him to keep up with RB 12. So will he make it into this group? Probably. So maybe I'm not answering the question entirely, but he's probably out of these guys one that I'm very much doubting.
Yeah, I agree with that because his entire role and outlook is just not what it was before.
It's a different system.
Yeah, it is
too.
And he's behind a guy that was a top 10 guy, regardless of how consistent and efficient, using similar words there that Jacobs was, but he's still behind him. We'll get to the next one here. This one's probably a quick one from Triple Play Fantasy, a bunch of great guys as well. At Trip Play Fantasy, how do you identify a trade partner? Need-based or good trading relationships? So I'll give an example. I'm in this league, and I'll never name names because I got home people that watch these things, but I'm in a league that we've been in for a few years, and there's guys that, like, it takes us, I don't know, 10 minutes to make a trade. And like, we compliment each other like, oh shit, that was easy. I mean, we're not trying to bullshit each other. We're just getting the deal done. I've also recently in this league tried to make a deal, and some guy like scolded me. He like sent me a paragraph telling me how bad of a trade it was. In typical like screenshot fashion, I pulled the trade, and the trade was like super even. I had like Ryan McDowell verified account. He actually sided on my side, like things like that. And I don't typically do that, but I just like wanted some like, hey, like I don't want to get scolded. So it's weird. Like you have these relationships in your league, but at the same time, like me and you, Stephie, might be in a league, but maybe you don't want any of my players. So like, why waste the time trying to make things work? So I think it's a good balance, but I think you have to figure out ways in dynasty leagues, especially, to build some sort of relationship, because you can really get off on a bad note with somebody and burn a bridge. Again, I'm in another dynasty league. Some guy offered me the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th rookie pick for Najee Harris after I drafted him. Like things like that. Like you gotta figure out ways to build relationships, because you don't want to always be trading with the same guy over and over again. You want to be able to hit up this guy and this guy and this. I mean, different people in your league. So I don't know if you have different thoughts or anything like that for that.
You know, and it's crazy because I really have struggled with trades this off season. And you know what I think it's, you know, I think it's secondary to me now being on Twitter. Because I notice, and you know, some people have probably seen my tweet. People are so disrespectful about the fact that I'm a Giants fan. And what they do is they think that I actually am a big enough fan to jeopardize my roster in order to get someone like Kenny Golladay, to get someone like Daniel Jones. Like and I think this should be a rule of thumb for everyone. You need to realize that the person that you're trying to trade with values that player to some level that you do. Like if you're going to go and make an outrageous thing, like I'm not going to I'm not going to take Daniel Jones for a 1st and Julio Jones and a 3rd. Like you're not going to get that, because that's absurd when I drafted him in the 18th round, right? Like that's ridiculous.
Not to cut you off, and I'll let you keep going, but I don't think that your end goal is to have Daniel Jones at quarterback, Saquon at running back, Kenny Golladay and Evan Ingram in your lineup. I think you just want to play fantasy football.
Exactly. That's the thing. So I've gotten so many very offensive trades lately. And now I almost nearly any time I see a Giants player, now I'm just declining them. Like, I don't even care. Like, now I have to make a presence that I don't want your Giants crap. Like, that's fine, but I also think they're crap. I've said, if you actually listen to my stuff, you would know that I only value 3 Giants players in fantasy this year. I don't care what you're playing, if it's redraft or dynasty, and one of those players you can get off waivers. So, you know, like you're not, it's Danny or Saquon. And then other than that, I'm going to take Rudolph, and then I don't want your crap. Okay. So like, that's it. So that's one thing. I think you have to be respectful too. Like that, some of the trades I've gotten this offseason, Dynasty Jacobians knows that I yell at him all the time. He sends me probably the worst trades. I asked him to stop sending me trades. It's okay. He knows this is a very open thing that we have. He's horrible at trading with me, which is fine. It's cool. So I think finding players like you know, league mates, like you said, that there's like a mutual, you know, you have a good relationship is also important. You're not going to always trade with the same person, but I think especially too, you know, if you're high on a player and someone else is high on a player, if there's a way that you can make that work on both sides, like I'm all about helping like both people. I mean, if you send me a trade and I can rob you, I'm going to rob you. Like, I'm not going to respect you then. But if we can do a trade that we're respecting both sides, I'm all in on that. That's fine. Like, you're high on Kenny Golladay. I'm not. Let's trade him for Julio Jones or whatever, you know? So it depends on the person.
Perfect. I wanted to end on that because the very next question has to do with that person. It's like the perfect transition. Perfect. At Do or Dynasty, Andrew Lee, where we at with Kenny Golladay in Dynasty? I know we all love to fade Danny Dimes and Jason Garrett in general, but in Kenny G, is Kenny G a buy low candidate? And this is at Do or Dynasty. And you just mentioned it, so I guess we got to talk about it. I'll list it off quick, and you can give your quick thoughts. I think I only have pretty quick thoughts about this as well, but Fantasy Pros Dynasty has him wide receiver 22. Fantasy Points Dynasty has him wide receiver 24. 2018, he was the wide receiver 21. 2019, he was the wide receiver 9. We know he's got the touchdown upside. I think he's got a nice, clear path to volume in the Giants offense. Fantasy Points, Fantasy Pros, they have him somewhere between 22 and 24. Do you think that's fair, or are you lower, higher?
He's an interesting. He actually might be. You know, people don't really like talking about Giants players unless they're trashing them and not trying to actually think about them, right? He really is one of the most polarizing players for me. He really. I'm confused about Golladay. Why am I confused? Is because, you know, the talent is so much there. We had this weird season. You know, he broke my heart in redraft, and I wasn't high on Golladay until I realized that we really do need the weapons. Everyone knows that. I got on the Golladay train the second that I thought it was actually possible. I wasn't going to get excited. So I wasn't all in on Golladay. I'm not totally bought in. What I am bought in on, though, is giving Daniel Jones an actual wide receiver 1 that he has never had, giving him a guy that can complement the fact that he is, and I'll say this, everyone, make sure you're listening, the best deep ball passer in the league. Okay. Ooh. Like, don't forget about it. Okay. Like, he is the best deep ball passer in the league. And you have a guy like Kenny Golladay that can 100% be a wide receiver 1. That's what he is. You know, people keep saying he's a beta, not an alpha. You're being ridiculous. You also probably drafted Josh Rosen the year he was a rookie. So, like, he's, you know, like, he's not a beta. The guy is a fantastic contested catch wide receiver. He's, especially in that system, he is a wide receiver 1. Like, you want to talk wide receiver 2, that's Sterling Shepard. Wide receiver 3, that's Slayton. He's wide receiver 1, period. So I think that the Daniel Jones and Golladay connection is going to be really awesome, because I think that there's also a component, you know, these players are human beings. And I think that Golladay was really unhappy in Detroit, and he had options to go other places. And I think he values being on the Giants. There must be something there that happened. I don't know entirely why players want to play there, but this offseason we've seen that happen. So I think if Daniel Jones can get cooking and Garrett can not be Garrett. No, if he can, you know, be a little bit more creative. You know, there was tons of times Slayton lost 11 points for this team. All of those points, all of those catches, Golladay would have made and scored. Like, it's not even without question. Like, on film, Slayton dropped a lot of really good passes, or he lost a contested catch. So I think you're going to see him really step into a good role there. But again, the problem with the Giants is we've got a lot of people over there. And it's not even like the, you know, Dallas, who it's like a lot of mouths to feed. No, there's literally a lot of people on the Giants that could get the ball. You have Saquon plus all the RB depth, whatever you want to consider it. But as far as wide receivers go, we're also talking Golladay, Slayton, Shepard, Pettis, who people forget they added. You have John Ross, they also added. You also still have guys like Mack and CJ Board that did show that they were relevant a little bit, not in fantasy, but they were in the playbook. And then you also have Rudolph, like we talked about earlier, and
you mentioned the rookie.
So, what was that?
Did you mention Kadarius?
Oh my God. And I did. Thank you. Exactly. So I didn't even, I haven't even mentioned. So I actually had to mute Kadarius Toney on Twitter because I can't handle everyone right now.
Fair.
So I actually have keep forgetting about him a little bit because I've muted him. as long also Aaron Rodgers. Like, I just can't listen. I need like a break. So I did mute him, so I forgot. But again, Kadarius Toney, you added there. So we're talking about a lot of people, and we also don't trust Jason Garrett. So how does Jason Garrett make this work? But Golladay at where he's going, where I've seen him, I actually haven't seen him ranked higher. What you said was very high for what I've seen. People have him very low. You know, even my guys at FTN have him, I think 29 is the highest that he's ranked there. So until my rankings get up, and then I'll completely destroy that. But I do think he's a great, you know, all the Giants guys, other than Saquon and Daniel Jones, any of these guys that you can get in these late rounds, just throw the dart. Because if you have the guy that ends up being Daniel's guy, then it's going to be a hit, you know?
And just two notes before we end on our last quick question. I like the muted words, like quick tidbit right there, because that kind of gets to these shows, because I feel like these shows, we don't just like harp on what everybody's talking about all the time. That's why I like the mailbag, and I like the diverse topics here, because everybody talks about the same shit all the time. But for two, Kenny Golladay, I think people have that. Again, I've said it for another player in the past, like, what have you done for me lately? And what has he done for you lately? He didn't play a lot of football last year. And I think he did, like you said, he had a choice where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to New York. I think he saw a clear path to being an alpha, and I think that's what he's going to be. Is he going to be a top 10 guy this year?
No.
I'm not going to say that. But is that like early 20s for dynasty? Like 20, let's say 22 to 25. Is that fair? I think that's pretty fair. And I think a lot of people are out on him, and I don't think he's super expensive right now for redraft, ADP, or for dynasty. So he's definitely interesting.
He's falling low, very, very, very low. I've seen it happen in best ball. I think I got him in like one of these leagues. I tried to look back. It's hard to look back at when you draft them. I got him in like the 11th round. That's ridiculous.
Interesting.
Like you're letting him fall. You have to at least value talent when you're drafting. I even will take guys as much as we have guys that we don't like. You know, like if Zeke falls to me and I'm picking at 201, I'm taking Zeke. Like, I'm not an idiot.
For sure.
Right? Like,
for sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
even if you don't like him.
My guy.
Absolutely. Let's get to one more, and then we'll wrap things up. We did have a couple more questions. Hutchinson Brown, he's actually
fantastic.
He is, and he's super, super young.
So young.
I think he's like 14.
Yeah, he's like 14. In high school. He's a great kid.
Yeah, he is. He sent in a video to one of the other podcasts before. I think it was with Bob Lung, and just shout out to Hutchinson. He's grinding early. I'm turning 30 later this year. I'm trying to like hang on to my 20s and seeing Hutchinson like killing it at his age. I'm jealous, but great. I've been turning 21 for like 7 years now. So. Same, but mine's like mentally, so I got to like shift things around.
Right, I know.
He asked, how are you ranking the 3 Jaguars wide receivers for 2021? And this goes hand in hand with Victoria's first question about, you know, these offenses that we try to dive so deep into. I'm going to make this simple. I'm going to make this simple for me, and then you can give your thoughts on this. I'm going to say, so I had the stats, and I'm not even going to look at them, but the points per game between Chenault and Shark this past season were around 11 something. They weren't super good, but the quarterback wasn't always super consistent either. They had multiple guys playing. I'm going to say Chenault at 1 because I think Urban Meyer loves a gadget guy, and he's going to use him in different ways. I'm going to go Chark at 2. I'm going to go Marvin Jones at 3. But my main point that I'm going to get at is these are all flex guys. These are not your starting wide receivers. I think if you take any of these 3 guys, they have the potential to play in your flex spot, and that's what they are. So I'm not going to try to sell you guys on any one of these guys because I don't see them as a wide receiver, 1 or a 2. I mean, if one of them breaks out big time with Trevor Lawrence, then so be it. But for now, on this day in June, I'm going to say they're all flex guys.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because I tweeted out the other day, JJ Zacharyson that has the late round pod with FanDuel there. A fantastic pod, by the way, very short, very easy to consume, something that I love to throw on in the background, but he digs into a lot of different things. In one of the episodes recently, I don't know, it must have been somewhere in the last 3. He mentioned that really rookie quarterbacks don't support more than one receiver in fantasy. It doesn't happen. That episode is totally worth going to listen to, but really there's rarely examples of guys that are able to, support 3 wide receivers, let alone 2. So it's something that has also changed the way that I've been drafting since I listened to the episode, because, those are the teams where, something you and I talk about a lot is it okay to have more than one wide receiver on a team? If it's not a rookie quarterback, yeah. So that's gonna be my new part of it, is like, it's great as long as the offense is good and it's not a rookie QB, go for it. But I agree with you completely. These guys are flex guys. I also feel that way with ETN still, with Robinson. We're talking about flex players until they prove otherwise. But, rookie QBs, when they come into the league, they don't support more than one player from a position the way that everyone is expecting guys like, like Lawrence, like Wilson, like Lance. Even if he's step in, it'll be interesting what happens. Fields as well.
And just on a final note too, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to do well, and I think the Jaguars, again, are going to be a team, like I said before, with the Bengals, that are going to have to throw the ball a lot. But at the same time, Shenault, Chark, and Marvin Jones, we're not talking about Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. It's not like that 3 of a wide receiver core that we should be like super excited about all 3 of these guys. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with your point about rookie quarterback. So
yeah, and no rookie is proven yet either. That's the last thing that I want to mention. Like, and I keep catching myself too in these best ball leagues, like going for the rookies. And I think I'm only doing that because I've watched so much of their film lately, and that's all we're talking about. But I forget that, rookies disappoint every single year, and there's so many questions around it. So sometimes it's better to play it safe and go proven sometimes, but it's great to take them because the flex opportunity there is fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good points all around, Stephie. And again, I know you had a rough day, but I appreciate you coming on the show though and killing it. I think that just kind of speaks to your character, because some people have a rough go and they kind of turn themselves off for the day, but you have a rough day and you come on the podcast and you just like kill it per usual. And I appreciate that. So Stephie, as we close things out, can you remind everybody listening, maybe not live here, but where they can find you, and then anything else you want to plug that you have coming up? Because I know you're busy.
Of course. And I want to thank you because I know I change the time every week. Everything's crazy right now. And today I was so set on the time, and you are a fantastic co-host. I'm so happy that we have this show together. It's awesome. But as always, at Stephie Smalls with 3 L's, I'm going to finally post small talk. I got a little distracted today with everything going on, so I haven't been able to. I finally recorded off topic. I'm very excited for everyone to hear the first episode. Tomorrow have our Friday show with date, the usual stuff, have some things in the works. And then for the season, look forward to Sundays are for the girls. It's going to be a blast.
Sundays are for the girls. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, I just want to close the podcast saying thank you to everybody that listened to this live. We still got people in the comments. Really appreciate that. And then if you listen to this on iTunes, Spotify, all that great stuff, feel free to comment on anything you heard on the podcast. Again, we always appreciate all the listeners, and hope everybody has a nice weekend. I think next week we'll be back at it on Thursday. I think I'm on the Dynasty Rewind show on Tuesday, so I look forward to that.
That's so much fun. I love going on this show. I've been on there twice. They're great, great, great people over there.
Absolutely. Mike's a great friend of mine, so I'm always about linking up with him. So have a nice night, everybody.